Hello everyone, this is Lori with 3 Keys Astrology and the newest reader for Astrology.com. I'm an advanced intuitive astrologer who began a series a couple weeks ago called Crimes, Critters, and Cruelty. In this series, we are on person of interest number 3. This video is about Buster Murdaugh, the only living son of the decedent Maggie Murdaugh and incarcerated Alex Murdaugh. At this time, I think I should do a little recap, but there are 3 other videos actually. The very first subject was a cosmological analysis of Alex Murdaugh, the father in this family, where I explain that patterns and probability, not only the resemblance genetically happens in family, but of course our behavior, of course our attitudes, and of course, in this family's case, entitlement. They're the heirs of a 100-year law legacy in the Low Country in South Carolina. So I'm going to give you a small recap of what's been going on, but please do go enjoy those videos and critical analysis astrologically of Alex Murdaugh and his decedent son, Paul Murdaugh. Now, the videos for Paul are in part 1 and 2 because when I tried to click on the screen so I could read his astrology chart in real time, I accidentally cut the video off. So unfortunately, that's in part 1 and part 2. I also referenced an incredible um, analysis early on after a double homicide murder of Maggie Murdaugh, mother, and Paul Murdaugh's son, by Rachel Shannon, who produced a video within a month of these murders on July 6, 2021. She did an excellent job, and I hope she gives us an update from her perspective. It was very informative. So today, I'm going to give you a little recap. This video is the analysis of Buster Murdaugh, and not only am I going to talk a little bit about his personality, but I'm also going to take a look at what was going on the night that Stephen Smith was murdered with a bloody head trauma that left an almost 8-inch gap in the side of his head. The suspicion is that it was with a baseball bat, and that he was likely raped that night and left in an uncompromising position in the middle of the road with his knees up to his chest, face down in the road. And that investigation's been reopened. That night happened to be July the 8th in 2015. And the purpose for these videos, where we have unsolved crime and criminal favor by the prosecutor's office because of family inherited legal favor, and that 3 of the Murdaughs were served the prosecutor's office, 3 different family members, while these brothers, and now their father, have definitely curled the law and gotten in despicable favor, heinous and egregious favors, where the everyday, ordinary, common man certainly would not. So let's talk about this recap. Buster Murdaugh, first of all, is 25 years old, and he just lost his mother and brother on the 7th of June this year, this past summer. He, in this scheme of crimes and this maniacal manipulation and murders of 3 people for whom we pray, hope, and need to write to our legislators so that this crime is solved and these 3 families that have been ensnared in the maniacal manipulations of the Murdaughs finally get justice. So Buster Murdaugh is the would-be $10 million heir to an insurance fraud scheme when his own father alleged that he was shot in the head at the roadside. It's now come to be there's speculation that he paid his best friend to shoot him in the road, but he lies in the police report and says it was a random stranger driving by on September 4, 2021. His failed scheme was again to manipulate insurance policies, a habit he's had since 2018 that now has come to light as well. And so he's also the first person on the scene of the double homicide of his son and his wife. And yet he doesn't call police for half an hour. And so in the series, Crimes, Critters, and Cruelty, we are now exploring the third person. The first person we analyzed was Alex Murdaugh, the second person in two-part series, Paul Murdaugh, and now we're talking about the only living brother and son, Buster Murdaugh. So his name is actually Richard Alex Murdaugh. And so, on a recap of the murders and mayhem of this murder um, saga and criminal saga of the Murdaugh family, we'll start with June 7th when Alex Murdaugh calls 911 half an hour after he allegedly finds his wife and son shot in a double homicide. The backstory is that the son decedent Paul Murdaugh had three felony counts in a fatal drunk driving boat accident that stole the life of Mallory Beach, age 19, in a drunken rage that I explain in the videos on the part one and part two series of Paul Murdaugh, that night of a fatal boat crash in February 24, 2019. Paul Murdaugh was getting ready to stand trial in September when this incident occurred on June 7th, and both he and his mother lost their lives. He wasn't a nice boy, and I prefaced the video talking about how we have this peculiar, actually, um, reverence for those that are deceased when hopefully that's changing. If someone was a monster in real life, a criminal and conniving, we shouldn't remember them in esteem in these fake glorious legacy because three people are dead and all have interweavings relationships to this family. So the backstory of this June 7 murder is that their son Paul, the youngest son, who had a pretty ugly chart, frankly, an ugly disposition, um, that this backstory has to do with the 2020 February 19 death of Mallory Beach. Now, on June 17th, Alex Murdaugh's brothers, creep and liar, lawyer, con man, and accessory, Randolph, who goes by Randy, Murdaugh the Fourth, cries faint tears on Good Morning America. So this is 10 days after the double homicide, and he pretends not to know a single soul or anyone that would want to harm his family. And yet, in the legacy of the Murdaughs' prosecutorial positions, 12 people were sent to death row, over 5,000 people a year are sent to jail, by their own crimes. I'm not saying that the Murdaughs haven't done any good, but this Randy Murdaugh, this lawyer who clearly lies in this interview that I encourage you to find on Good Morning America, not 9 weeks later, is suing his brother and forcing him to resign from the law firm. And then part of the charges being pressed that Alex Murdaugh embezzled millions of dollars from the law firm, what I call protecting assets and family asses. So in this video, you should also know that this Randy Murdaugh, the lawyer, Randolph Murdaugh the Fourth, is always a step behind in every incident. In Stephen Smith's murder, he's the first caller to the family when they discover their son's dead in the middle of the road of blunt force head trauma, and yet the prosecutor's office, paid for medical examiner, deems it a hit and run. There's many things come to light that you can see in the Paul Murdaugh video that's just not true. And guess who the second phone caller is to the family after the coroner? Randy Murdaugh. So he's the one on Good Morning America that clearly is lying. So he's the second phone call. Coroner calls to announce the death of their son. And then he calls the Stephen Smith family and offers free legal services. This is cunning and this is a con, and he's always one step behind. So he's crying on Good Morning America on June 17th about the deceased double homicide of his nephew and sister-in-law, and feeling so badly for his poor brother, who's a horrible monster as well. And that 9 weeks later, protecting the legacy of the law firm by suing his brother, being part and parcel in him being disbarred and trying to protect the family money. Um, Yeah, I didn't believe him for a moment. Alex also has a brother named John Marvin. His tears at least seem sincere on Good Morning America. The other interesting thing is there was $100 million reward or $100,000 reward for the conviction of the person who committed these crimes, and it was just rescinded. Again, Randy Murdaugh protecting himself and manipulating by his um, he's a manipulator, pure and simple, lawyer or not. So within 9 weeks, he changed his complete attitude, but he lied on Good Morning America clearly. There's plenty of motive for plenty of people um, for whom there have been death sentences and corruption around these murders: Satterfield, Smith, and Mallory Beach. So the backstory is there's suspicious allegations and evidence to both Buster that point to Buster and the decedent Paul Murdaugh in the death of 19-year-old Stephen Smith on July 2015. We're going to examine what was going on in the ethers on that date and in conjunction to Buster Murdaugh's chart because it's very interesting. And so, like I said, Uncle Randy called the family and offered his free legal services. But the fact of the matter is, both boys, Buster and Paul, who had tempers and arrogance and lots of 100-year-old family favor and prestige, were at a baseball game not 4 miles from where they found the body of Stephen Smith. There are paint flecks also in evidence on the body that proved to be the very same chromatography of a four-wheeler vehicle that the boys had. So, baseball bats, head trauma from blunt force trauma that left a 7, almost 8 inch gaping hole in this boy's head, and he was likely raped. So, the interesting reason that there's suspicion is that the decedent, Stephen Smith, has a twin sister for whom he confided that he was having a sexual relationship with Buster Murdaugh, whom we're analyzing now. Now, in the very first video, without knowing any of this, I said that I saw homosexual characteristics and traits in the family. Father, Paul, and now in Buster's chart. Um, on June 22nd, 2021, law enforcement reopens the investigation in the Stephen Smith cold case, and at the same time, Randy Murdaugh forces Alex Murdaugh to resign from the family law firm for stealing millions and millions of dollars. It's a trend, guys. It's a trend in the manipulation of this Randy Murdaugh. Again, saving asses and saving assets, in my opinion. On September the 4th, Alec Murdaugh is shot in the head and survives in this scandal of paying his best friend to shoot him in the head and kill him so that his son Buster could collect the $10 million. On September the 8th, South Carolina Supreme Court revokes Alex Murdaugh's law license because Father Alex is also a lawyer and also was appointed and served in the prosecutor's office. Um, so again, on September 16th, Alex Murdaugh is charged in an insurance fraud scheme and for falsifying police reports. He's given a measly $20,000 bond, even though the family has millions and millions of dollars. Um, and the backstory is the death of the Murdaugh maid, for which I speak about in the previous two videos in this series, Crimes, Critters, and Cruelty. And please, thank you for your wonderful comments. I read them. I really appreciate them. I teach astrology if you find this fascinating. It is a wonderful career that can manifest itself in journalism in a million different ways. Astrology is the way, was the way 4,000 years ago for all of our most prominent positions in thinking careers. So get a hold of me at Three Keys Astrology or on Astrolada's website, where you can click and pay for your learning modules in astrology. I also consult and I do readings. But this series is amazing, and I hope you're liking it. So far, it seems that you are, and I thank you so much. If there's any family that you know, because I'm a legacy reader as well, I've gone back to the 1700s doing legacy readings. So if there's any family that you know that you're interested in me doing an analysis for, please put their names in. I'll check it out and see what I can see. So on October 14th, um, so the backstory, there's a $4 million insurance policy and settlement when Alex Murdaugh, when in 2018, Gloria Satterfield, the family's maid Murdaugh, for 20 years, housekeeper, caregiver, the list is long, where I see very likely that Paul Murdaugh and is suspect of pushing Gloria Satterfield down the stairs. Head injury again is fatal. And Alex Murdaugh gathers her two sons after her death, and this lawyer says, sue me. I have an insurance policy and you can reap money for a wrongful death suit. And he takes the case and he secures for himself a $4.3 million victory. And Gloria Satterfield's sons see none of the money. He spends it. So he gets arrested on October 14th, and in this wrongful death and insurance fraud, though he pockets the $4 million and the sons see nothing. On October 14th, his lawyer feigns that he's been an opioid addict for the last 20 years and blames his condition and manipulations, insurance and otherwise, for his self-proclaimed 20-year opioid addiction that nobody believes. And so he goes into rehab. He only gets a $20,000 bond. But while he's in jail, investigators and attorneys for the sons of Gloria Satterfield start digging around. Several attorneys go to try to get the assets frozen because this legacy of Murdaugh are manipulators, especially Mr. Uncle Randy, protecting assets and assets. And on October 19, he's rearrested and hauled in front of a judge. At the same time that he's in jail, and brought to court before the judge for this insurance scheme and fraud of this Satterfield money and other allegations. The judge denies Alex Murdaugh bond and requires a psychiatric evaluation. Where is his son Buster, the would-be heir to this $10 million insurance fraud scheme, had Alex indeed become deceased? He's in Las Vegas, playing and gambling with his Uncle Randy. And they're playing roulette. And it's just sickening to me. So Dad's willing to get shot in the head and die to leave you 10 million. And you, Mr. Entitled Brat's son, are in Vegas with your scheming uncle playing the roulette wheel. It's very interesting. So that's the scoop. And that's where we are today, up to date. I think many of you that are older, like myself, will remember titles, um, "Sins of the Father" in literature and film and cinematic expression, and we all have heard this saying, "Like father, like son." So Buster's 25 years old now, suspect in the duel with his decedent brother in the murder of Stephen Smith. And what we know about Buster is that on the night of the drunken fatal boat accident that took Mallory Beach's life, Paul, the decedent Murdaugh, had the idea of his big brother Buster. We also know in my investigations and research that Buster has a lot of traffic violations. He thinks he can drive without insurance. He thinks he can drive without a license. There's some alcohol abuse going on here. But again, when your family's at the prosecutor's office and you got Uncle Manipulator Randy and Daddy the drunk and alcoholic and so-called self-proclaimed opioid addict that gets everybody out of trouble, why should you obey the law? Well, you're above the law. So Buster inherited in this legacy of Murdaugh law and lawyers who wield and curl the law to their advantage, decides to go to law school, but he's kicked out of law school in South Carolina in 2016 because he plagiarized. So this is the basic scope of the character. So yeah, so that's the backstory, and he's gambling away and having himself a good old time in Vegas while Daddy is being reprimanded by the court and has to undergo a psychiatric evaluation. So the lawyers now that are protecting Mallory Beach, Stephen Smith, and Gloria Satterfield, none of them believe that someone with a 20-year opioid addiction and alcoholic tendencies could practice law and stand before the court and work in the prosecutor's office, and neither do I. So let's talk about Buster Murdaugh, and you can go see the maybe I'll do a final video in this series of the synopsis of Father and Sons, because like I said, patterns repeat. Not only do we have resemblance in our characteristics and propensity for illness, whether it's physical, emotional, or mental, but we also have repeated patterns and characteristics cosmological. So Buster Murdaugh, like his little brother, has his sun and Mars Saturn in Aries. Now, the brother had the opposition. And remember when I told you, when you see Mars and Saturn in conjunction, that's vengeance, that's hatred, that's warring, that's impulsive, that's fiery hot. And Saturn's that cold stop and can be cold revenge, and is in Buster Murdaugh's case because he's got his moon in Aquarius. Moon conjunct Uranus and Aquarius in a precarious position. And so, the interesting thing about this is the repeated pattern. He's got the same wheel of life as his father, and his dad, I spoke about having this Geminian complex, shows up again in both sons. In son Paul, his friends say when he was drugged and on alcohol, had an alter ego named Timmy. He's the decedent son that got all kinds of legal favor the night of that tragic boating accident. And Buster also has this repeated two faces, two sides of a personality. What you see is not what you get. And so while he has sweet natal promises like his father did, there's also, they both share a 12th house, precarious alter ego. And like I said, what you see is not what you get. So it's interesting. Moon and Sagittarius conjunct um, in a conjunction to Pluto on the night of Stephen Smith's death is alarming and portends crisis and death. And that's exactly what happened. So on the night that Stephen Smith was murdered, Buster Murdaugh had the 12th house transit Mars on his ascendant, conjunct his ascendant. So this warrior squaring his Aries natal sun, Mercury, and or Mars and Saturn show that hot and cold personality ignited on the night of Stephen Smith's murder. Now, a rape configuration can be Venus and Pluto in compromising positions. And on this night, when Stephen Smith was likely raped in this hate crime for telling the secrets that he was having an affair with Buster Murdaugh, we have the transit sun against Pluto in Capricorn. And that we also have in his natal chart Venus opposite Pluto. That's a rape configuration, guys. And it's this chart on the night of Stephen Smith's murder for Buster Murdaugh is rife with the conditions for murder, death, and a criminal murder at that. So the death planets are Pluto and Saturn. They're crisis, and this is happening again on the parental axis, just like I described Stephen or Paul Murdaugh's the fatal accident energy that I called a night in hell over and over again that occurred on the parental axis of getting favor. There's also these 12th and 6th house matters are secrecy, opposed to what in our everyday life, it's again, you don't see what you're going to get. You can't tell. And in the 12th house in Buster Murdaugh's chart is Venus in Gemini. So there's two sides to his love life, and it's secretive and it's hidden. And because Buster Murdaugh said out loud, I'm having sex with Buster Murdaugh, that is the motivation for the hate crime that would end in his demise. So the transit Saturn on the night that Smith is murdered of blunt force trauma by a baseball bat and left for dead of head injury in the middle of the road and raped, transit Saturn is conjunct Pluto. Transit Pluto is opposite transit Saturn, and that's an extraordinary atomic bomb of anger and revenge happening. And also to his natal Pluto, transit Pluto is also native, conjunct his natal Jupiter. Um, and that again is opposite that transit Mars. So this is big anger, big hatred, and pure hell. The transit Moon is in Aries, so that's on his Sun. So Moon, my privacy, my feelings, my hot feelings in Aries, opposing self and others, and in relationship, how I am to self and others, and squaring the hatred that's going on, Mars opposite Pluto, Venus opposite Pluto. And this is, guys, fitting for a murderer and fitting for the murder that did indeed happen. So his natal Mars is square Jupiter, and that is, in this case, do whatever I want. I don't get in trouble. I have favor in the law. It's an arrogance. Mars in his Mars and Aries, I'm number one. I do what I want. And again, redheaded, it's July, it's hot. Just like I said for his brother, being embarrassed that people would find out that he had a homosexual liaison with Stephen Smith and wanting to keep that a secret, hence the hate crime. Then we have Mars squaring his ascendant in his natal chart and his descendant, where Moon Uranus can be the female partner in a homosexual same sex relationship. And it's squaring in the same place right on the cusp of the eighth house. We have a lot of eighth house, sixth house, and 12th house energy the night of this murder. Those are secrets, deep psychological secrets, sexuality. And he's got an intercepted Taurus and Scorpio, the houses of sex and money, that liken and mimic some of the same flavors and tones that were going on in his brother's chart, who was maniacal, ugly. Paul Murdaugh spit on his girlfriend, slapped her, and in front of other people, and unashamedly. And that tells some distinctive personal characteristics of pure ugly hatefulness. That's all over this chart. So on the fatal night of blunt force trauma, we've got the moon at the Venus opposite Pluto of rape energy in Buster Murdaugh's natal chart activated by transit Mars opposite Pluto and conjunct Jupiter in a big way. This is a lot of hatred, a lot of ugliness. And then Buster's Mars is in that secretive 12th house in transit that night. And yeah, that's pretty ugly, you guys. So, um, what else do I want to say? This energy is explosive, it's hot, it's atomic, it's critical, it's sexual, and in his birth chart, he's got the sun squaring Mars. So there's sun squaring moon. This can be a conflict in a homosexual male, and um, and his sun, his I am, his reason to be, is squaring his nodes. Those are fated nodes, those belong to the moon. And again, it's in the place of me to we, and the blurring and graying of boundary with each other and what's appropriate and what's societally appropriate. So he's got his Mercury square Uranus, and that's somebody with a hot mouth, someone that's going to cock off and say horrible things. His Mercury is also square Neptune. So, like the family legacy, the tendency for alcoholism here, and probably young indulgence of alcoholism, just like I said, I would lay money on his brothers. Now, Jupiter in this situation is of arrogance and entitlement, and we can see this in the whole entire family. And it's opposite his ascendant, so you don't see what you get. Again, those two faces with Venus opposite Pluto, 12th and 6th house matters. Just like Daddy, just like the little brother, and just like Uncle Randy, the manipulator. So, yeah, intercepted Taurus and Scorpio. Um, and it's interesting because it's in his fifth and 11th houses, so whereas Mercury's there too. So it can be that confusion that a young man has when he realizes that he's homosexual. He knows now of age that it's not widely accepted and that it can be colored by shame and embarrassment, but that is the truth. And that Pluto happens to be right there on those in that cusp. And Stephen Smith was indeed his baseball friend, his childhood friend. And Stephen Smith admitted that he was having sex with Buster Murdaugh. Pluto, again, Pluto and Saturn are the crisis planets. They're the critical planets that involve end of life. And they're hot and they're triggered. The hot sun squaring his Aries moon at the top of his chart, where my reputation is me, 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 oldest son, heir apparent in of Alex Murdaugh and legacy, but squaring that transit Mars in the 12th house, and more importantly, the rape axis, Venus opposite Pluto. So, yeah, patterns repeat over and again. This, in my analysis, I'm saying it, is indicative of a murderer on the night that Stephen Smith was murdered. So you take care. Please subscribe to this channel. You can find my videos on astrolotta.com and 3keysastrology.com in a website for ordering services, but you can also see the videos that I produced on YouTube, 3 Keys Astrology and astrolotta.com. If you want to see all my work, just type in Astrolotta with Lori and you'll get all my videos. So you take care. Please make your comments below. I care about them. Tell me what you think about this kind of family favor. Please report if you are affiliated personally with this family, if you had any childhood experiences with this arrogance, this prestige, this entitlement, this favor that the common man never gets. That's been going on for over 100 years. And again, our prayers are with Stephen Smith's family, Gloria Satterfield's sons, and Mallory Beach's family. 3 lives were lost, and this family's manipulated and curled the law one too many times. And I pray for justice for Gloria Satterfield, Stephen Smith, and Mallory Beach. Take care and stay tuned for episode 4 in Crimes, Critters, and Cruelty. Thank you.